Tide, and welcome to Tide TV this week. I'm Roger Hoover, joined by Kara Goldstein. Kara, the regular season came to a close last Saturday in really dramatic fashion.
Yeah, it did, Roger. What a game. I mean, Iron Bowl history.
Certainly was the first overtime game in Iron Bowl history. It went for 4 overtimes as the Crimson Tide won 24-22. Let's take an all-access look at the first overtime game in Iron Bowl history.
It's a series that dates back to 1893. Bama leads the all-time series 47-37-1.
Go JT, ready! Exercise! We ain't got to do nothing extra. It's just be us. It's be us all day. Nobody sacrifice much. We do practice all the practice. That's it. Every one of you guys going to play a role in this game. We don't know what it is. Just play your role in the chance. Dominate with the opportunity. Let's go!
Touchdown, Auburn.
Strung out wide and another tackle for loss.
To try to make it 10-0 Auburn. And he has.
10-0 and no mistakes by Auburn so far.
Tipped and intercepted by Alabama. To give Robinson big hole.
How about Brian Robinson into the clear?
Give to Trey. He'll kick it out to the near side. 20. Hurdles over a man. Near side end zone. Get it off. Touchdown, Alabama. Caught by Ja'Cory Brooks in the end zone. What a throw. What a catch. Good Lord, what a day.
They now built like us. It's going to be legendary, bro.
We are going to overtime. Touchdown, Alabama in overtime. Slade Bolden.
They don't turn me up.
Riker, the kick, and good.
I did it.
Jones left. Goes that way on a quick slant. He's got it to Mechie.
Throws. It is knocked down by Alabama.
The throw goes the other way. Mechie's in. Alabama wins in 4 overtimes.
We never quit.
Wow, you know, it's amazing, Roger, that in the previous 85 Iron Bowl games, none of them have ever gone to a tie or overtime. With all of the big plays and crazy moments, you think you've seen it all, and then, nope, a win in 4 overtimes.
This game will surely be talked about for a long time. Then how did Coach Saban feel after the game? He was in a really good mood. Let's take a look at this video taken by his daughter, Kristen. And how special is this? Miss Terry, so excited, jumping up and down. There comes Coach Saban, giving her a big hug. Look at that huge smile on Coach Saban's face. What a moment. Now let's hear from Coach Saban. Let's hear what he had to say after the ball game about this very special moment.
Well, I think they named some of these games in this series, the Iron Bowl, because there have been some great games, some great comebacks, and I can't tell you how proud I am of the way our players, kept competing in the game over and over and over. We came up with plays when we needed to come up with plays. We struggled offensively in the first half. A lot of pressure on the quarterback, played man-to-man, made some good adjustments at halftime, did a much better job in the second half of moving the ball, and always didn't, pan out for us, but man, you cannot ever imagine players competing in a game any better than what they competed in this game. I'm talking about the defense getting stops when they needed to, the offense going on a, whatever that was, 90-some yard drive to tie the game, players playing and making plays that hadn't played that much this year, that were young players, but after halftime, it just seemed like everybody was all in, and we were fighting like I've never seen us fight, all year long, and it's a great feeling. Players were as happy as I've ever seen them after the game. I got to give Auburn a lot of credit. Their players, really played well in the game. They played hard. Their defense really played an outstanding game, but our receivers and Bryce made some plays when we needed to down the stretch, and that was the difference in the game. But wow, what a game.
For his performance in the Tide's Iron Bowl win, defensive end Will Anderson Jr. was chosen by the SEC for their Defensive Player of the Week for the 5th time this season. Anderson finished with 7 tackles, including a team-high 3 tackles for a loss to add to his college football best total of 30.5. Anderson also added another sack as he leads the nation in sacks as well with 14.5.
And congratulations to Fedarian Mathis on being named to the SEC Football Community Service Team. Mathis participated in the Knicks Kids Habitat for Humanity home build this year and has been a regular speaker at the Tuscaloosa County Juvenile Detention Center. He also distributed school supplies to kids in his hometown district, hosted youth flag football games in his hometown of Wisner, Louisiana, and participates in Alabama's youth reading program, traveling to elementary classrooms around the community to read to students.
Now let's take a look at the Players of the Week for the Iron Bowl as chosen by Coach Saban and the staff. In their 4-overtime win, 7 players were chosen this week. The lone player selected on offense was wideout John Mechie. Mechie finished with a career-best 13 catches for 150 yards as he made big plays the entire game. Mechie had a pair of 2-point conversion catches in overtime, including the game winner.
Along with Will Anderson Jr., DeMarco Helms and Fedarian Mathis were chosen on defense. Helms finished with 6 tackles as he broke up a team-high 2 passes, and Phil Mathis had 3 tackles, including a team-high 1.5 sacks.
Tyree Jackson and Will Reichard were chosen on special teams. Reichard had Alabama's first points of the game on a 30-yard field goal and kicked a 38-yarder in the second overtime to tie the score.
Some really clutch performances in the Tide's win, and with that Iron Bowl win, the Crimson Tide dropped to number 4 in the Associated Press Top 25, but the coaches have the Crimson Tide at number 2. And as you can see behind us, Roger, the College Football Playoff Committee put Alabama at number 3 again this week.
Georgia is still at number 1. You have Michigan moving up to number 2, and Crimson Tide sitting at 3. Just behind Alabama is Cincinnati at 4.
Other SEC teams include Ole Miss at number 8, Arkansas at 22, Kentucky at 23, and rounding out the rankings at 25 is Texas A&M.
The final college football playoff rankings will be released this Sunday, December 5th. We'll then know if Alabama will make the college football playoff or participate in one of the New Year's 6 bowls coming up. The Crimson Tide have made the college football playoff every year except for 2019.
Yeah, hopefully they can make it again this year. Let's now take a look at our Crimson Tide in the NFL Players of the Week. And this week we start with a couple of quarterbacks again. These Bama quarterbacks are putting up some big numbers in the NFL.
They really are, as Mac Jones right now is the favorite to win NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. He led the New England Patriots to a 36-13 victory over the Tennessee Titans. And Mac Jones was 23 for 32 for 310 yards with 2 touchdowns. Jones had the highest passer rating in the entire NFL for the week at 123.2. Jones was also named the NFL's Offensive Rookie of the Month.
It was also a big week for Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins. Tua finished 6th in the NFL in passer rating at 108.3, and in the Dolphins' win over the Panthers, Tua finished 27 of 31 for 230 yards and a touchdown.
Tua's teammate, who was on the other end of a lot of those touchdown passes, Jalen Waddle. Jalen has been tied for the lead in receptions for the week with 9 and also had an NFL high 137 yards. Jalen also had a 9-yard touchdown catch from Tua.
On the defensive side, Ronnie Harrison Jr. had a big game for the Cleveland Browns. Harrison finished with 14 tackles, which is the second highest in the NFL in Week 12, and Harrison also intercepted Lamar Jackson for his 5th career interception.
And Patrick Surtain II had a monster game for the Denver Broncos in their 28-13 win over the Los Angeles Chargers. Surtain picked off Justin Herbert twice, taking one of those all the way to the house for a 70-yard touchdown. Surtain's 2 interceptions led the NFL this past week, and for that he was named the AFC Defensive Player of the Week. A lot of NFL league-leading performances this week for the Crimson Tide. Love to see it.
Yeah, we love to see some new guys, and it really speaks to the strength of this program.
It certainly does.
It's SEC Championship Week. Stay with us. We'll preview the matchup between the Tide and the Georgia Bulldogs when we return.
TideTV This Week is presented by the University of Alabama, where legends are made. Ford, For great offers on F-150, see your local Ford dealer. Proud sponsor of the Crimson Tide.
Come on now! Alabama raining down the threes. The buzzer sounds. Bama hangs on. Oh, my goodness!
They're headed to the Women's College World Series.
And the Alabama Crimson Tide are your SEC champions for the 6th time with a record-breaking run at the Rhodes House. And a perfect present for Montana Fouts and Alabama at the Women's College World Series.
Welcome back to Tide TV this week. With the Tide winning the SEC West, that put Alabama in the SEC championship game once again. This year, the Crimson Tide will take on the undefeated Georgia Bulldogs.
For a preview of the SEC championship game, our Christopher England joins us now. Christopher?
This weekend, third-ranked Alabama takes on #1 Georgia for the SEC championship. The Crimson Tide is going for their 6th SEC championship in the last 8 years. And to preview this year's matchup, I'm joined by former Alabama and NFL quarterback John Parker Wilson. JP, it's great to see you.
Good to see you, man. Crazy. 6 out of the last 8 years. It's pretty solid.
That it is. And before we get into that SEC championship game, I want to get your thoughts on the Iron Bowl. What a win for the Crimson Tide. The Alabama defense made some big plays when they had to, and the offense put together one of the greatest drives in Alabama football history. For you, sitting in the radio booth calling the game, how was it?
It was awesome. I mean, defense played great for the entire game and really had to pick up when our offense was struggling. And the way that Bryce Young and the offense came back to score the tying touchdown and then put it away in overtime, it was a team win. And it wasn't the prettiest game we've ever played, but you beat your rival on the road in an overtime game. That's all you can ask for. So I think we got some things to clean up going into Georgia. But this team's got to have some confidence going into the SEC championship, just knowing that they've found ways to win games, be it Arkansas or LSU, these tight games that aren't perfect. They've found ways to win.
Now, Alabama owns a 6-game win streak over the Georgia Bulldogs. That includes 2 SEC championship wins, a national championship victory, and last season's 41-24 win in Tuscaloosa. But it all started with the 2008 blackout game. JP, I'm sure you're familiar with that one. You had a pretty huge performance in that win, 13-16, 205 yards and a touchdown. It kind of seems like that was one of the games that kind of helped kick off this Nick Saban era here at Alabama.
I completely agree. It was my second year with Coach Saban, my senior year, that was another huge game for us. Underdogs on the road, we're able to get it done. And I think you're right. I think that team, winning 12 games in the regular season and getting back to the SEC championship was pretty awesome. But, Georgia, the blackout game was a big part of that. So fond memories for me. And hopefully we can keep this winning streak going Saturday against the Georgia Bulldogs.
Well, in Alabama's 41-24 win last season, the Tide picked off Stetson Bennett 3 times, sacking him twice. This year, Bennett has guided the Bulldogs to the second highest scoring offense in the SEC behind Alabama, averaging almost 41 points per game. How have you seen Stetson Bennett improve from last year? And can the Tide defense disrupt him that way again like they did last year?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the important thing is disrupting him, because what Stetson Bennett's doing is taking care of the ball and spreading around to a lot of different people, be it running backs, tight ends are involved, multiple wide receivers. So it really puts a lot of stress on the defense that you've got to cover the entire field. You really can't key in on one person or even one position group because they've got everybody involved. And I think that's what Bennett's doing is he's got a lot of time to sit back there, pick the defense apart, and be very efficient with his passing game. So I think you're right. The biggest key for us is going to be back there and disrupting him. And I think we do it with one of the best players in college football now, Will Anderson, is getting pressure on him and, the team circling around him and getting back there and affecting the quarterback.
While Alabama leads the SEC in scoring offense, Georgia leads the nation in scoring defense, allowing just 6.9 points per game. That's less than a touchdown, JP. Something's going to have to give. How can the Alabama offense have success against this stout Georgia defense?
Very stout defense, very stingy. Kirby Stark's got to play with a lot of emotion, a lot of passion, and a lot of confidence. So I think Alabama's got to try to get out on a lead early, get up and put some points on the board and make that Georgia offense hold serve. And for us this week, I think it's going to be a lot of SEC tough games, SEC championships. It's going to be really one up front and then controlling the ball, keeping the ball, not turning it over. And really, it's going to be up to the offensive line. These guys up front, they turned it on in the third and fourth quarter last week against Auburn, and that's when you start seeing us put together some drives, finally put some points on the board, and then finish it all in overtime. So this week, just like most weeks, it's going to be one up front.
Well, thank you, JP. I appreciate it, and looking forward to a great SEC championship and win, and we're in for the college football playoff.
I think it's going to be a fun game, and I hope you're right. Winning, you're in. And you can ask nothing more from Alabama. We can still control our own destiny. We still got a shot.
Well, thanks, JP. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Kickoff for the SEC Championship is set for 3 o'clock on CBS. You can catch the radio broadcast with Eli Gold, John Parker, and the rest of the Crimson Tide Sports Network crew on the radio and RollTide.com beginning 3 hours before kickoff at noon. Stay with us. We'll have more Tide TV this week coming up next.
Tide TV This Week is presented by the University of Alabama, where legends are made. Ford, for great offers on F-150, see your local Ford dealer. Proud sponsor of the Crimson Tide.
And the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama is really playing with max effort.
I can't shoot no brick. 9:30 in the morning. Hustle like I ain't getting no portion. While you was dormant, let you sleep since that's so important. Practice my form, I done broke out of the no.
Hannah Barber.
To the bench.
Taylor shot no brick.
I love how they have no fear. Man, it's all of them. Everybody's chasing Alabama.
Come on now! Alabama raining down the threes. The buzzer sounds in Bama Hector. Oh my goodness!
We don't have to be a football score or basketball score. We just win championship.
The job's not finished. We're not done yet.
Welcome back to Tide TV This Week. I'm Roger Hoover, joined by Kara Goldstein. And the Alabama men's basketball team has certainly been on a roll to start the season. Coach Oates' squad started the season undefeated at home, winning all 4 games to start the year at Coleman Coliseum.
For Thanksgiving, Alabama hit the road for the first time this season as the Tide took part in the ESPN Events Invitational at Disney World in Orlando, Florida. Alabama dropped their tournament opener to Iona on Thanksgiving Day, 72-68, but bounced back and closed out the tournament with 2 wins.
It's good to see that for the Crimson Tide. On Friday, Alabama took on Drake, and with the score tied at 61 in the second half, the Tide used a 13-3 run to jump out to a 10-point lead with just over 2 minutes remaining. From there, the Tide held on for the 80-71 win. Javon Quinterly had a game-high 18 points, while Juwan Gary finished with a double-double, 14 points and 10 rebounds.
Alabama wrapped up play in the ESPN Events Invitational on Sunday against the Miami Hurricanes. With Alabama holding just a 3-point lead at the half, 33-30, the Tide exploded for 63 in the second half to outscore the Canes 63-34 in the final 20 minutes. Alabama connected on 13 of 17 three-pointers in the second half and out-rebounded the Canes in the final 20 minutes 20-8. Keon Ellis led the Tide with a game-high 22 points. Jordan Shackelford added 5 three-pointers to score 15, and freshman J.D. Davison had his first career double-double as he finished with 13 points, 10 assists, and 6 rebounds. With the 2-1 record in Orlando, Alabama improves to 6-1 on the year.
Crimson Tide fell a few spots in this week's rankings as Alabama dropped 6 spots in the Associated Press and also 7 in the coaches' top 25 as Bama is ranked 16th in both polls.
Alabama takes on number 3 Gonzaga this Saturday night at 7 o'clock in Seattle, and the game will be broadcast on ESPN2. Stay with us. We'll have women's basketball and volleyball highlights coming up next on Tide TV This Week.
They're headed to the Women's College World Series.
And the Alabama Crimson Tide are your SEC champions for the 6th time with a record-breaking run at the Rhodes House. And a perfect present for Montana Fouts and Alabama at the Women's College World Series.
I love how they have no fear. Man, it's all of them. Everybody's chasing Alabama.
Come on now! Alabama raining down the threes. The buzzer sounds in Bama Hector. Oh my goodness!
be a football score or a basketball score. We just win championship.
The job's not finished. We're not done yet.
Welcome back. With only a pair of 3-point losses to Duke and Tulane, who are combined 12-1, the Alabama women's basketball team has gotten off to a pretty good start this season.
Yeah, Christy Curry's squad continued that on Sunday with a big win over Bethune-Cookman. Alabama led 44-18 at the half and continued their strong play in the second half as the Tide rolled to an 89-45 win. Kyla Wade-Warren and Jamia Mingo-Young each had a game-high 16 points. Wade-Warren also had 9 rebounds, while Mingo-Young added 4 rebounds, 5 assists, and 4 steals.
Then on Tuesday night, it was the Crimson Tide holding their 4th consecutive game at home inside Coleman Coliseum. Alabama hosted Memphis. Crimson Tide defense held the Tigers to just 18 first-half points as Alabama rolled to a 71-44 win. Tide had 4 scores in double figures for the first time this season as Megan Abrams and Brittany Davis each had a game-high 14 points, while Hannah Barber and Jada Rice both finished with 13. The win for Alabama improved the Crimson Tide's record to 6-2 on the year.
The Alabama volleyball team wrapped up their season at home this past weekend in Foster Auditorium.
Alabama celebrated its seniors on Friday. Abby Margman and Sarah Swanson were honored before Alabama and Ole Miss began play in Game 1 of the weekend. Margman was second on the team with 7 kills and 5 digs, while Swanson led the net defense with 3 solo blocks. Wouldn't be enough as the Rebels defeated the Crimson Tide in Game 1, 3-0.
The Rebels stayed hot on Saturday as they swept the Tide once again 3-0, and that wraps up the season for the Alabama volleyball team.
And the University of Alabama also announced this week that head coach Lindsey Devine has resigned. A national search for her replacement is ongoing.
Stay with us. We have a special Iron Bowl edition of our Plays of the Week coming up next. That and more when we return in just 90 seconds.
It's a done deal. 995. It's in. Alabama, the 2021 SEC champions.
I'm so proud of them. They have worked so hard. They have been fighters.
Come on now! Alabama raining down the threes. The buzzer sounds. Alabama hangs on. Oh my goodness!
As the snap goes to Finley, he'll throw it up high. Tipped and intercepted by Alabama. Looks, throws the fade route, near side end zone. Got it! Oh, touchdown Alabama! Looks, throws, wide open, touchdown, Alabama in overtime. Looks left, throws a BB, caught for a 2-point conversion. Backpedals, looks left, throws, touchdown, 2-point conversion, and Alabama wins. John Mechie on the grab.
That was a special Iron Bowl edition of our ATI Plays of the Week. Now let's take a look at our Players of the Week, brought to you by Legacy of Hope.
Will Anderson wreaked havoc on the Auburn defense in the Iron Bowl. Despite being double and triple teamed, Anderson finished with 7 tackles, a team-high 3 tackles for a loss, and a sack. Anderson also leads the nation in tackles for loss and sacks. For his performance, he was named the SEC Defensive Player of the Week for the 5th time this season.
John Mechie had a career-best performance in the Tide's Iron Bowl win. Mechie had a career-high 13 catches for 150 yards. Mechie had a pair of 2-point conversion catches in overtime, including the game-winning reception in the 4th overtime.
And those are our Legacy of Hope Players of the Week.
Now we're getting set for Alabama against Georgia in the SEC Championship game. Tune in next week as we bring you more on the Crimson Tide, plus the all-access content of the Crimson Tide you can't get anywhere else. See you next week, everybody. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
This has been a presentation from Learfield,